Hi everyone, it's Mizenko. Today I wanted to take a look at the track Duplicate or Duplicate, Wildly Different Shapes from my first album, Destruction of the Outer Realm. I never came up with which version of that word I wanted to use, duplicate or duplicate, so that's up for you to decide and interpret which one of those it would be. I'm doing these videos in anticipation of my second album, Psychosomatic Waves, and I'll also be doing some track breakdowns from that album too. What I wanted to note about this track is its minimalism, both in its compositional development and the minimalism in the amount of tracks that were used. If we actually take a look at this session, we only have these 10 tracks. We have the 3 here producing this audio. We have the 3 here, which are like background layer synths, a few aux tracks, and one for volume control, because certain sections get louder, and I utilize this just to emphasize those moments. So if we look at this piece compositionally, it's pretty straightforward, but I think that me talking about this idea might inspire you to use something similar in your composition, and this can very clearly be seen in the MIDI. We have 2 notes all throughout this section until we reach here, and then we get 4 and 5 note patterns, sometimes even more notes are used. And I think this is kind of cool to use this very minimal development using dyads and then moving on to chords, for example. So you can implement that in any way you want. Say you use only 3 notes of a scale in a melody, and then you can expand that out to 5 or 6 notes, so the listener can feel this contrast. And it's something that is pretty simple, but if you stretch it out, can lead to some pretty interesting results. So that's really all to talk about the composition. And I just really like dissonant chords. So a lot of these chords are very dissonant sounding. Also, if we look at these, all the MIDI from these 3 tracks are the same. And this is a technique I really liked using on Destruction of the Outer Realm. And it's something that can really produce a nice effect. You've got various synthesizers or something that produces a beat. And if you put the same MIDI information into them, you'll get some pretty interesting results and combinations of sounds. This is actually how I came up with the title of this track. You take these duplicates and they produce wildly different results. So that's how this track got its title. Okay, so let's take a look at the 3 layers on their own. This one is using Osiris. This is a free synth plugin, so if you want to check it out, you can play around with this. And it's also using another cool free plugin called Argotlunar. This is a granular delay plugin, and for those of you that know about granular stuff, it's really cool to work with this. And for those of you that don't, it breaks up the musical information into various grains and plays around with the audio. You'll really hear that after the attack of the notes. So let's take a listen to that. So we hear there that these grains come after the sounds. It produces a really cool effect. And if you've noted, there's a lot of space being used, and this is something I really like to take advantage of. And I think that many musicians fail to take advantage of is the power of silence. And if you can, give it a shot. Leave this space, because I think it can help build tension, and it also is a way to help the music breathe as you move on from one part to the next, and it can really build anticipation. For the second one, we use this synthesizer, Mr. Alias 2. This is a kind of old school, really weird synthesizer. I'm not really sure how to describe it. And I really enjoyed using these kind of older VSTs in the making of Destruction of the Outer Realm. And I think that's what you can attribute its sound to. So if you want, check this one out. It's also free to download. And this is also using the Argotlunar grain delay plugin and some other effects. So let's take a listen to that. So that kind of just sounds like a weird telephone or something. And the final plugin that was used is the one that's called Combat Loop Drum Machine, which employs different samples in different octaves. When its notes are held out, it kind of produces its own beat. But what I think is pretty cool for this is that since I used various different lengths, the drum loops have various different lengths, and there's quite a bit of variation within the drum parts themselves. And I really like this because personally, I prefer an approach of variation over repetition. Or if I'm going to repeat stuff, I prefer to have things constantly developing or changing, even in a very unnoticeable way. So let's take a look at that. I think that this plugin could be good to use, but I don't know if you can use it across many projects because it would probably end up sounding the same over many tracks, and that's not something you want. But for this particular track, it worked very well. So let's take a very quick listen to that. So I think it's pretty obvious there that there's some kind of cohesive element between the different instantations of the beat, but that something is constantly changing. So it ended up being pretty cool for this track. That's really all I wanted to talk about today. And I hope it can give some inspiration. And I hope that, everyone's kind of, or there's a lot of people that want to use many, many tracks within a session to produce something. But it is possible to get away with only using this. I didn't think it was necessary to talk about these. These are just like background atmospheric synths that come in the later sections so that there's kind of this sense of development going through the track. So thank you, and I hope you've learned something as I talked about this kind of minimal use of composition and development. And see you in the next video. Bye-bye.